Story. She saved the Lycan king's pup. Minutes later, he refused to let her go. Elara Voss almost didn't stop. She had been driving for 40 minutes in the kind of rain that makes the road disappear, and her hands were stiff from 12 hours of clinic work, and the heater in her old truck was doing almost nothing against the cold. She was tired in the way that goes past the body and settles somewhere deeper, the kind of tired that makes a person feel invisible even to themselves. But her headlights caught something at the edge of the road, small and pale against the dark mud, and her foot hit the brake before her mind caught up. She sat for a moment, wipers going, peering through the windshield. Then she pulled over, grabbed the emergency kit from the back seat, and got out into the rain. It looked like a dog at first. A large pup, silver-furred and trembling, half buried in the mud near the tree line where the forest began its long climb up the mountain. She crouched down and reached out slowly, speaking in the low, even voice she used with frightened patience. Hey, I see you. I'm not going to hurt you." The animal didn't pull away. That alone told her something was wrong. Healthy animals run. This one could barely lift its head. She opened her kit and got to work. The foreleg was fractured. She could feel it without pressing hard. The breathing was shallow but present. The heartbeat strange and strong beneath her fingers, pulsing in a rhythm she had never quite felt before. She didn't think about that. She had learned a long time ago that the body in front of you is the only thing that matters in that moment. Not what it is, not where it came from, not what it means. Just the breath, just the pulse, just the work. She splinted the leg with what she had, stripped a strip of her jacket when the bandage wasn't enough, and pulled the animal against her coat to share warmth. The rain came down harder. She stayed where she was, talking the whole time, low and steady. "You're okay, I've got you. You don't have to be scared anymore." The pup's eyes opened. They were gold, not the amber of an ordinary animal. Gold, clear and bright and steady, watching her face with an attention that made her breath catch for just a second before she steadied herself and kept her hands moving. She heard them before she saw them. Not footsteps exactly, more like the absence of sound, a sudden hush that spread through the rain and the trees and made every instinct she had go very still. She looked up slowly. They came out of the forest in a line, 7 figures, moving through the dark with a speed and silence that no person should be capable of. They were large, much larger than they should have been. Their eyes, even in the dark, caught the light in a way that was not human. Every one of them was looking at her hands. She did not run. She was not sure she could have. But more than that, she did not want to put the animal down. Not with the legs still being held together by her grip and the creature's breathing still shallow against her chest. One of the figures stepped forward. He was the tallest, the coldest looking, in the way that mountains are cold, not cruel, just immense, shaped by something that ordinary weather cannot touch. His hair was dark, his jaw set hard, and his eyes, when they found hers, were the color of deep water before a storm. He looked at her for a long moment. Then he looked down at the small silver form pressed against her coat, and something moved across his face that she recognized immediately. She had seen it in hospital hallways at 2 a.m, on the faces of parents who had just been told their child was in surgery. It was the look of someone who had been terrified, and who was now looking at the reason the terror had not become something worse. He reached out toward the animal. Elara held on. "Wait," she said. Her voice came out calm, which surprised her a little. "The leg is splinted, but it hasn't been set. If you move him wrong, you'll undo everything. Let me show you how to lift him." The men behind him went very still. She wasn't looking at them. She was looking at the tall man with the storm-colored eyes, and she watched him make a decision in real time. She could see it happen, the moment he chose to follow her lead instead of going around her. He crouched down. She talked him through the lift. Together, carefully, they transferred the animal into his arms without disturbing the splinted leg. When it was done, she sat back on her heels in the mud, rain running down her face, and the man looked at her for the second time. "Come with us," he said. It was quiet. It was not a threat, but it was also not a question, and Elara, who had learned to tell the difference between the two, understood immediately that this man did not often say anything twice. She told herself she would stay 1 hour. She was still there at midnight. The compound was deep in the forest, invisible from any road, built from stone and dark timber, and something older that she couldn't name. Inside it was warm and quiet, and no one asked her anything directly. They watched her the way cautious people watch someone they're trying to decide about, and she let them, because she understood that too. The pup, the boy, she corrected herself, when the shift happened and she saw him clearly for the first time, was put in a room with a fire. He was young, maybe 8 or 9 years old when human-shaped, with silver blonde hair and the same golden eyes she had looked into in the rain, and he held her hand while she finished checking the leg properly and would not let go. "What's your name?" he asked. "Elara." He considered this. "That's a good name," he said seriously, as though he was granting something. "What's yours?" "Finn." She smiled. He smiled back, and then his eyes closed, and within 2 minutes he was deeply asleep, her hand still loosely in his. She sat there in the chair beside his bed and listened to him breathe, and told herself she would leave as soon as someone came to relieve her. The door opened quietly. The tall man stood in the doorway. In the firelight, he looked different than he had in the rain, still large, still immensely still. But the hardness she had first read as coldness looked more like exhaustion now, the kind that comes from years of bracing for loss and never quite being able to put that bracing down. She recognized that too. "His name is Calum," said a voice behind her. She turned. A man leaned against the far wall, shorter than the king, sharp-featured, watching her with eyes that missed nothing. He had the air of someone who had assigned himself the role of saying the things no one else would say. "He is king here," the man continued. "I'm Rael, his second." He paused. "And you are his mate." Elara looked at him. "I don't know what that means," she said. Rael told her. He was blunt about it, which she appreciated. No softening, no gentle lead-up, just the plain shape of it. The bond, the recognition. The way a Lycan king's wolf chooses a person and does not unchoose. The reason she had not been able to make herself stand up and walk out the door, even though nothing was physically stopping her. "You have a choice," he said, at the end. "That matters here. You are not obligated." Calum had not moved from the doorway during any of this. When Rael finished, Elara looked at the king directly for the first time since the fire had given her enough light to really see him. "How long has he been without his mother?" she asked. A silence fell over the room that told her she had put her finger on the exact place that had never healed. 4 years, Calum said. It was the first thing he had said since bringing her inside. She nodded slowly. She looked at Finn, still sleeping, still holding her hand even in sleep. "I'll stay until morning," she said. "We can talk about the rest after." The king looked at her. Something shifted in his expression. Not relief, not yet, but the beginning of the loosening of something very long held. "Thank you," he said quietly. Morning came, and she did not leave. She told herself it was because Finn woke up with a fever, mild, manageable, but enough that she wanted to monitor it herself rather than explain instructions to someone else. She told herself it was because she needed to make sure the leg was healing clean. She told herself a lot of things throughout the day that were mostly true and only partly the whole story. In the afternoon, she found herself standing in a long stone corridor with a cup of tea someone had put in her hands. She had not noticed who, watching the rain through a narrow window when Calum appeared at the far end. He walked toward her slowly. The way she was beginning to understand was just how he moved. Like every step was deliberate, like he had decided to be somewhere, and then committed to it fully. He stopped a respectful distance away and stood beside her at the window. For a while neither of them said anything. The rain had softened since the night before, coming down in a fine gray curtain over the forest. "You didn't have to stay," he said. "I know. But you did." "Yes." Another silence. Comfortable, she realized with some surprise. She had spent most of her adult life finding silences with other people uncomfortable, waiting for them to end, bracing for what came after. This one was simply quiet. "Tell me about your life," he said, "before last night." She thought about deflecting. Then she thought about how much energy deflecting took and how tired she already was, and she told him instead. Small town, a clinic on the edge of a mountain, 12-hour shifts, a house that was clean and organized and felt like a waiting room for a life she hadn't figured out yet. A family that had never quite known what to do with her seriousness. A man she had loved once who had decided, eventually, that she was too much in some ways, and not enough in others. Calum listened without interrupting. He did not offer opinions on any of it. He simply received it, which was rarer than it should have been. "You stayed because of Finn," he said, when she had finished. "Partly," she said honestly. "What was the other part?" She looked at him. In the gray light from the window, he looked less like a king and more like a person, tired, careful, carrying something heavy that he had never once considered putting down because he didn't think it was his right to. "I haven't felt like I belonged somewhere in a long time," she said. "Last night, in the mud, in the rain, I knew what to do. For the first time in a long time, I was exactly what the moment needed." She paused. "And then I came inside, and it didn't go away. That feeling." He was quiet for a moment. "It won't," he said. "If that helps or makes things worse, I don't know, but it won't go away." She laughed a little, which seemed to surprise him. "That's either the most honest or most alarming thing anyone has said to me in years." The corner of his mouth moved, almost a smile. She had a feeling that was significant and didn't push it. On the second morning, Rael found her in the corridor outside Finn's room and looked at her with the careful expression of a man taking a measure. "The pack is talking," he said. "I imagine so. They're saying the king refused to let you leave, that he wouldn't allow it." Elara looked at him steadily. "That isn't what happened." "I know." Rael studied her. "That's why I'm telling you." She understood. The story people tell about a thing is not always the story of the thing. She had seen that in hospitals too. The version that makes it into the hallway is usually the one with the cleanest shape, the easiest edges. Power demands. Power decides. It's simpler than the truth, which is that sometimes a very powerful person simply asks, quietly, without armor, and someone chooses to answer. On the third night, she moved her bag. She did it quietly, with no announcement, carrying her single duffel from the guest room down the hall to a room with a window that faced the forest. She had looked at the window that morning and known that she wanted to wake up looking at trees. Calum was in the hallway when she came out. He looked at the bag in her hand and then at her face. "The guest room is the same size," he said carefully. "The window faces a wall," she said. He nodded slowly. He stepped aside to let her pass. She was 3 steps down the hall when his voice reached her, low and quiet. "Elara." She stopped. "Thank you," he said. "For Finn, for stopping, for staying." She turned to look at him. He was standing exactly as she had first seen him, very still, very large, holding himself with the particular tension of a person who has trained themselves not to ask for things. The difference was that now she could see it for what it was, not coldness, not distance, the careful posture of someone who has been afraid of the answer for long enough that asking started to feel the same as loss. "You only asked once," she said. He looked at her. "Most people would have asked again," she said. "Or not asked at all and just decided. You asked once and then let me be." She held his gaze. "That's why I stayed." She turned and went to her new room with the window that faced the trees. Finn's fever cleared on the 4th morning. His leg would take longer, weeks of careful movement and rest. But the break was clean, and Elara had done her job well in the rain and the dark. He would walk without a limp. He would run. He told her this was the best thing that had ever happened to him, which made her laugh so hard she had to sit down. Calum, standing in the doorway watching his son make the woman he had waited 10 years to find laugh until she was breathless, felt something shift in his chest that had been locked in place for so long he had stopped noticing the weight of it. That night, he slept without dreaming. For the first time in 4 years, there was nothing chasing him through the dark. The forest outside was quiet, the rain had finally stopped, and in a stone room with a window full of trees, Elara Voss lay awake for a little while, listening to the silence, and found, to her own surprise, that it felt exactly like belonging. End of story.